What's something obvious for everyone, but you only just realized? I recently discovered that honey isn't spicy. My husband was buying a bottle of hot honey, and I made some comment about the ridiculous marketing since all honey is already spicy. Turns out I'm just allergic. I remember someone on Reddit saying that in their 20s, they made a comment to a friend about not liking strawberries because of the spicy tingle flavor afterwards, was then shocked when everyone has no idea what they were talking about, then learned that they were allergic to strawberries. For the longest time, I always thought prima donna was prima donna. I didn't know my mom had a name until in first grade the teacher asked us what our mother's name was. Everyone answered but me. I never realized my mom had a name. I questioned my entire existence. I went to her straight after school. She was cooking in the kitchen. I asked her, "Mama, what's your name?" She smiled, stopped cooking, and came down to my height and told me her name. It was a sweet memory. But man, I felt shame that I didn't know that sooner. I actually made a little song for my son so that he would be able to remember my legal name and my husband's legal name in case it was ever necessary. I was so worried he would be insisting my name was Mama in an emergency. I also made up songs for our address and our phone numbers. I got the idea from a blog. I didn't realize until a couple of years ago it's pitch black, as in pitch aka tar. So I'm not a native speaker, which might make this somewhat excusable, but for the longest time, I thought sitcoms were named that because the main characters spend most of their time sitting in a living room in a bar. Even most native speakers don't realize that it's a combination of situational comedy. That big ship's wheel I got to turn as a kid was not actually controlling the cruise ship. I visited Rome with my mom as I was 6 or 7. We were staying in a line to go to the toilet in Colosseum, and she suddenly pointed to a crack in the wall and said that there is something there. I checked it out, and it was a Roman coin. Of course, I thought that it was real and kept it and told everyone I knew about it. I realized that my mom just staged it all only 10 years later. Still amazing memories, though. A few years back, I realized that the Christmas song, I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus, wasn't actually about the mother being unfaithful and putting out for St. Nick, but it was just the dad dressed as Santa. For almost my entire life, I thought the mom just got around. I was 26 when I realized otherwise. Eminem, M&M, Marshall Mathers. And here, I thought that one was obvious. Wait till you find out why Oprah's production company is called Harpo. I only learned recently that revenge is a dish best served cold. Means you should take your revenge at a much later time when your opponent won't be expecting it. That you can click, don't accept any cookies, and websites work just fine. I always thought that would also disable essential cookies, so would either accept all or go through the motions of only allowing essential ones. They certainly want you to think that not accepting their cookies will make all the websites you'll ever visit in your entire lifetime will be broken forever. I was 30 before I found out that the lights doing that stretchy thing at night wasn't normal. I have astigmatism. I was in my late 40s when I found this out. I always think of them looking more like this kind of shape than stretchy. I was 42 when I had an epiphany about water towers/tanks. They're not for storing water for an emergency. They're for storing water for water pressure. I figured it out when I wondered why the water never went off when all other utilities went out during storms. Felt pretty stupid. As one commenter said when I posted this before, they're not so towns can put their names on them as if to say, fuck you. Look how much water we've got. Back in the day, some guys were flying around counting geese and ducks for a migration study. Engrossed in their task, they got lost in the days before GPS, so they buzzed a small town's water tower to read the name, then got out their map. I had no idea that they moved the holes on a golf course. I'm 32 years old. I always thought the concept of golf was mega boring anyway, but playing the same course over and over again, who would even bother? No one would, which is why they moved the holes. Wait, what? They moved the holes? For me, it wasn't until recently that I found out I'm allergic to cucumbers. I used to think the numbness they caused in my mouth was normal, similar to how peanuts affect me. It turns out I'm also allergic to peanuts, which I only learned about recently too. Cilantro and coriander are the same plant. For a while, I even confused astigmatism as astigmatism, so I assumed that a person could also have two stigmatisms. This was a long time ago, but the first time I got my eyes checked, I was in 1st or 2nd grade or something. The optometrist told my mom I'm almost completely blind in one eye. She looks at me and asks why I wouldn't say anything. I said I thought everyone only had one working eye. That's ridiculous to ask a kid, though. When I got glasses at around 13, my parents didn't ask me why I never said I was nearsighted. I just thought my eyesight was normal. Like, it would only make sense if people were walking around saying things like, look, that tree has exactly 200 leaves on it. Then people might realize their eyesight isn't normal. That's why we have tests for these things. A percent sign is a 0/0. Actually shows a ratio as the symbol. I just figured that out yesterday. I was like 12 when I realized that you are supposed to close your eyes to fall asleep faster. Before that, I just stared at the ceiling and waited till I fell asleep. That stripper poles spin. I always wondered how they spun so fast without burning their skin. Poles can be on spin mode, which means they spin on their own axis, or they can be on static mode, which means they don't spin. Most good quality poles can be switched back and forth from spin mode to static mode with an Allen key or by flipping a switch. Dancing on spin mode and static mode both have their own pros and cons. Source: I'm a pole dancer. Horns, the musical instrument, are called horns because they used to be made from horns, animal horns. Wait until you hear about the bass. Just the other day, my wife said, "Hell in a handbasket." I asked, "What's a handbasket?" It's then that she realized it was handbasket. We're in our 30s. It was hilarious. In interviews, when they say, "Tell me about yourself," they mean as it pertains to work, not generally about yourself, and thank goodness. I don't want to tell them about myself. That you can take as many bananas as you want. I always assumed I had to take however many were connected together. I've had so many bananas go bad on me, LOL. Banks have height measurements at doors in case they get robbed, and Git can tell how tall the robber is. Didn't know that's what it was for until recently. When people say we should go for a coffee sometime, it doesn't necessarily have to be coffee, so you don't have to decline because you don't like coffee. You just say yes, and then you do something else. Also, when people dim lights and put candles on, they are trying to set the mood, not save electricity. When I was teaching, I said something would be ludicrous, and the whole class looked at me with interest and surprise. They didn't know Ludacris, the rapper's name, was a pun. I guess it's not that obvious, but my mom just had the revelation that Vermont is French for green mountains, from Vermont. Not me, but a friend. She grew up in a town where there was a giant water tower right above the jail. She just realized that it's a water tower and not a place where the prisoners were kept. She's 32. That the D in the Disney logo is actually a D and not a fancy G, like I always thought. Okay, hopefully, at least one person will find this comment way down the list. I remember in sex ed learning that you could get HIV from unprotected sex. I then thought to myself how beautiful it was that when a married couple wanted to have a child, they would risk getting HIV, because to do so, they would have to have unprotected sex. It wasn't till years later, and I mean way later, that I came to the fact that it spread from person to person through unprotected sex. I thought it just was like a random consequence that would occur sometimes when you had unprotected sex, like it would just appear like scraping your knee or something. Let's just roll the dice. HIV or baby, either way, I still love you.